Fellow painting enthusiasts and Blood Angels fans, this is Sprues and Studs, and today I am going to be giving you a step-by-step tutorial on how to paint an Assault Terminator Captain. So the whole point of this video is not going to give you a gold demon, but is actually supposed to give you a step-by-step walkthrough on how to amaze your opponent on the tabletop when you are slicing through your opponent's armies with a fantastically painted miniature. Typically, when I paint my miniatures, it takes anywhere between 3 to 4 hours, and I would expect you to take about the same amount of time to get through this model, following the steps that I have laid out for you. You will not be picking up every single detail on this model, as it is a quote-unquote grunt type of model. But I'm going to be teaching you how to break through the monotony of the red paint on the Terminator armor so that you can make those details flash and pop on the tabletop. And without further ado, let's jump into the tutorial.
Alright folks, ahead of you is a list of all the paints that you will need to paint this Assault Terminator Sergeant, so please feel free to pause the video while you're looking at all the paints that are needed. So using Retributor armor, you are going to be painting out basically all the finer details like the iconography, the chains, as well as the purity seals, the wings on the shield, the skull on the shield, and a bunch of various myriad other places that you're going to be painting this Retributor armor all over the place. And there's really no special technique that you will be using for this type of painting. You're just going to be putting this on as a base paint, so I would just recommend you to just paint away, and the most important thing is just to try to paint within the lines, because it prevents you from going back and trying to fix all the mistakes that you did before. So moving on, we're going to be using Warpstone Glow to paint the purity seal ribbons, and it's a very simple method as well. Again, use the same method as you did to paint all the gold icons, and you'll be perfectly fine for this particular part of the painting tutorial. Now, with my experience using this particular color, you're probably going to need at least 2 to 3 coats to actually cover up all the red on the miniatures. So the next thing that we're going to be using is Ushapti Bone to basically paint all the different skull type areas. So we're going to be looking at the skulls on the Crux Terminatus, the skull, as well as the ribbon on the Storm Shield itself. So this is going to be, again, using a lot of layers here. Typically with this color, you will need at least use 3 to 4 layers. Now the next thing to do is to use the Screamer Pink to paint the Thunderhammer handle. Now I really like warm brown tones on my miniatures, so I will use Mornfang Brown to paint the hair, and I believe that provides a really nice contrast to the rest of the other areas on the miniature so that it can stand out. Then next we're going to be using Cadian Flesh Tone to paint the face, and here I'm being very, very careful because, again, I don't really want to repaint these areas, so it's pretty key to try to paint within the lines. But again, if you do mess up, that's the beauty of painting. You can go over and fix your... Now the next thing that you're going to do is paint the vents, areas between the armor, as well as Thunderhammer with the Abaddon Black, and this is probably going to take the most time because it is likely going to be the biggest secondary color that you're going to be using for this whole entire miniature. So take your time for this one, and again, no real special technique to be used. You're just going to be trying to stay within the various lines. Here I'm basically trying to show you over here where to paint the black, so that's why I have left some of these places completely undone so you can just take a look. And then moving on with Leadbelcher, you're going to be painting the Thunderhammer as well as the armor as well as the Storm Shield. I am basically picking up in areas in which I think you should paint the Leadbelcher, and that's why you're going to see some incomplete areas so that I can actually point you the direction in which you're going to be painting. You're going to be picking out all the iconography, as you can see over there with the chalice, and the most important thing is you're going to be painting the Storm Shield with the Leadbelcher, and this is the predominant color that you're going to be painting on this Storm Shield, as you can see over here. And next we are going to pick up a pot of Stormhost Silver to paint the areas in which you want to paint the blood drops. Again, this is a very popular technique that I use to try to bring out the blood tears and drops as well as the lenses so that it can pop out on the miniature a little bit better. And the next thing we're going to do is basically shade the areas painted with Retributor armor with Reikland Flesh Shade. And this gives a lot more depth to the miniature and makes the Reikland Flesh Shade and the other places stand out a little bit more. Next thing we're going to do is to shade the Purity Seal ribbons with Bealtan Green, and this is a very, very short step because there's only so many Purity Seal ribbons. And the next thing that you're going to be using is the Vulpes paint to shade the Thunderhammer handle, and I really like the depth that this particular contrast media is able to do. Next thing, we're going to be using Nuln Oil to basically shade the areas that are painted in Lead Belcher, as you can see over there, to give more depth to the silver. When you're shading those parts over here, you can actually shade the whole entire area. However, the surface area of the Storm Shield is so large that I use pin washing because I don't want to darken up the Storm Shield too much. The next thing to use is Gorgrunta Fur to darken up the loincloth area, and notice that I'm using very, very generous portions of this contrast media, and that's what you're supposed to do. The whole entire thing is called one thick coat for this thing, so that's how you're supposed to use the contrast media. And the next thing that we're going to be doing is using Auric Armor to paint the areas in which we have painted Retributor armor, so this makes the gold stand out a little bit more than usual. So the basic gist of highlighting is to pick out these certain areas and the highest areas where light would be hitting it. So the next thing that we're going to do is use Ushabti Bone to basically pick out all the different raised areas on the Crux Terminatus, the ribbon on the Storm Shield, as well as the other areas that we have shaded over with Reikland Flesh Shade. Again, what you're going to be doing is using the edge of your brush to try to pick up those raised edges where the lights would hit, like you're seeing over there, and pretty much they'll make your miniature jump out. Next thing that we're going to do is to highlight the Purity Seal ribbons with the Sybarite Green. Again, using the same technique that I have taught you, try to hit it with the edges of your brush to get that edge highlighting effect. And we are making really, really good progress here. So next, we are going to be highlighting the Thunderhammer handle with Pink Horror. And what I'm doing right now is basically highlighting the little squares that you find on the Thunderhammer handle to give it a little bit more oomph and a little bit more pop, as you can see right here. And right now the Thunderhammer is currently a very dull black, so we want to highlight areas on the Thunderhammer, and these are going to be the raised edges, so the tops of the Thunderhammer, as well as the wires that are connecting the Thunderhammer. And the next thing that we're going to be doing is to basically highlight the silver areas that we have painted silver with Stormhose Silver. And the next thing to do is to highlight the raised areas of the loincloth with Scrag Brown, and like I said, try to use the edge of your brush to do this so you can pick out the edges of the highlights, and that's why they call it basically edge highlighting. And the next thing that we're going to move on to is to paint the lenses as well as the blood drops. So we're going to be using Warp Lightning for this as a contrast media, and then you're going to be using Blood Angels Red for the blood tears. Now, if you want more of a translucent kind of color to make the silver stand out a little bit more, please feel free to actually try to water this down, maybe to a 1-to-1 ratio, so that those things can pop out. Next thing to do is to shade the deeper recesses with Black Templar, which is a contrast paint. I like to use this contrast paint because it's very thick and heavy, and it settles in very, very nicely within the deep recesses and makes it pop out, and it's a lot better than actually using the Nuln Oil, in my opinion, which tends to be a little bit thinner in color. So what you're seeing me do is to basically bring life to the miniature by using the Evil Sun Scarlet to pick out the highest raised areas on the armor. And with your first highlight, you want to keep and make sure that it is a little bit thicker. And with your second stage highlight over here that you're seeing me do, you want to make sure that it is thinner than your first stage highlight, because you don't want to obliterate all the effort that you put in to make that first stage highlight. So I have to apologize to you over here. I thought I was recording how to paint the eyes, but apparently I did not turn the cameras on, so that's my fault. So that's what you saw over there. So the next thing that you want to do is paint the base, and this is likely the easiest part to do on the whole entire miniature. Moving on to texturizing the base, this is what I do to give more character to the whole entire miniature. And what I actually do with this textured paint is I will actually put it in front of a space heater to make it dry very quickly. In fact, it dries in about 5 to 10 minutes, which is a lot quicker than the normal, 30 to 45 minutes it takes to dry. Finally, I also shaded that area with Agrax Earthshade. And finally, we're going to be dry brushing the base. And the key with dry brushing is to make sure you are removing more than 90 to 95% of your paint. As you can see over there, I actually did not remove enough paint, so it actually left that ugly smear. But fear not, everybody, I'm going to make that go away by basically gluing the whole entire base and then adding grass. So basically, you will not see where I screwed up over there. So that's one thing to keep in mind about dry brushing. It's very, very important to remove most of your paint. But then again, like I said, you can cover it up. And so here is the whole entire squad completely painted up with the Assault Terminator Sergeant in the middle. I hope you found this painting tutorial to be very, very helpful. And as usual, thanks for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one.